Yeah, all good.
Okay. Right. So yes, hello. I don't know where I'm looking. Here we are. Hello. Thanks for asking me to contribute. So I'm a graphic designer and occasional letterpress printer, and I've put together this book style presentation to show you some of the stuff I've been doing over in the time of COVID, as the title says. I'm just going to do that. Right. So yeah, well, as you can see, the book is literally covered in coronavirus. So it's highly dangerous. And it's got a little label on it that I made this morning, printed on my desktop Adana HS1. Yeah, so I'll get going. Hang on. So yeah, it's obviously been pretty crap for most people for the last 15 months. You know, the obvious challenges that everyone's had, we've all done well to cope with. But for me personally, my graphic design work pretty much stopped dead in April last year. Lots of projects were shelved, lots of budgets cut, clients lost their jobs, so it was pretty tough, to be honest. But one of the upsides was that it gave me a bit of time to have a bit of a play around with my letterpress gear and have a bit of fun, really, in between, well, when I wasn't homeschooling the kids and trying to be a responsible husband. So some of the ideas relate to COVID and the times we're going through, like this first one. So this is an obvious sort of interpretation of the most basic health advice: to wash your hands. So this is a bunch of 12-point unit borders uses pixels made into a pair of hands, and then overprinted with brass setting circles to create the soap with some wood type. So I printed a bunch of these, gave a few to friends and neighbours, and they stuck them up by their sinks as a reminder. And this was one of the sort of another upside of the lockdown was making connections on social media and Instagram particularly. So this was a contribution to a Letterpress postcard sending kind of group, which was put together by Mark McKellier. And he sent out a little postcard block for everyone to use, and then sent a theme out, and basically we all contributed. I made mine post-consumer waste cards and printed them on the backs of cereal packs, because we got plenty of cereal, get through a lot of cereal in our house. And for this first theme, which was hope, I'd been reading a book called Grief is the Thing with Feathers, which is, it takes its title from an Emily Dickinson poem, which is Hope is a Thing with Feathers. So that was my inspiration. And I had a bunch of offcuts of bits of wood type and rules and things for a long time. So it was it's just a sort of happy coincidence, really. I was playing around with these and created this bird, which felt like a sort of tangram style bird with a few extra pieces for feathers, which was a nightmare to lock up, to be honest, but managed to work in the end. I printed a bunch of these and sent them off. And this was inspiration to try and create, well, basically I thought it would be great to have a tangram set, proper tangram set that you could actually print from. So I had one made up by Mark, and then spent some time playing around with that, working out how it could be made easier to lock up, what kind of shapes would be needed. So to test this prototype, I produced these multiplying rabbits for Easter, sent these off to a few pals. And this was inspired, or an interpretation of the mythical magic money tree, which some politicians apparently have in their garden. And I'd started this before lockdown, but the lockdown gave me time to finish it. It was quite complicated. And I've been collecting various pound signs over the previous year. But it gave me time to put it together. So here's the process. This was done on my galley-proof press, hand-inked, and 5 separate stages. So 4 colours plus a gold powder over the stars. And they're all overprinted in order to create this sort of final tree. This was just a thought I had while I was standing in a massive queue. And I thought, I've got a massive queue, so I'll print from it. That was it, really. And this was a little idea I had after hearing about the blatant lies that were being told by certain politicians. Over here, pork pie is Cockney rhyming slang for lie. So it just reminded me I had a pork pie block, and I used a little bit of palette script underneath, with apologies to René Magritte, if you can read that. This is my shed, which was also strangely inspiring because I had time to clear it out, which I've been meaning to do for quite a while. And when I did, I found these really great bunch of door furniture, metal keyhole escutcheons and lock plates and things, and just thought I can do something with those. So I had to play around and created this lockdown face symbol, which I quite liked the combination of it looking a bit sinister and angry, but also happy, which is kind of how I felt at the beginning of lockdown. It's kind of a weird mix of emotions. And again, this was hand inked and just put on the galley proof press. So walking was a big thing, and still is, but was particularly the first lockdown where that was pretty much all we were allowed to do for a few minutes a day. But I kept coming across these little plastic hooks. And I think over winter it was hats and gloves, packets of hats and gloves or whatever, where they'd hung on the shelf. But I think they also came from mask packaging, but they seemed to be everywhere. And every time I went out, I would see one. So I started just picking them up and thinking I'll do something with them. So I got them on the proof press and started playing around with patterns and also using them, trying to make them do other things, whether they could become illustrative as well. And then that led me to do this next print, which is an illustration of the expression elephant in the room, which uses a few of the plastic hooks, a couple of them which look to me like kind of gormless faces with their mouths open, and one which looked very much like an elephant to me. So the hooks were mounted on a lino block and stuck into the Adana, and then overprinted with type. And I printed 50 of those and sent them off to the British Printing Society publishing group, who I try to contribute when I can to that. And it was my dad's 80th birthday as well last year, so we couldn't get to see him, which was tough. But I made him this card, and this was based around the Roman numerals for 80. And if I press this, it should show you what it does, show you how it works. Excuse my gammy fingers. And then this one shows you sort of how it was done. I only printed one. Well, I did 2 or 3 to get it right, but I only really needed to print one. And to make it sort of efficient, I tried to do it all in one go, in one sitting, if you like. So I had both sides set up on the galley press, and then all the ink just hand inked at the same time. And then I could just flip the front over, flip it over and do the back. And then it was complete without having to sort of wait for things to dry. This is, so yeah, so this is going on a bit. There we go. Okay, and then it was Christmas, which was crap, to be honest, for various reasons again. But I thought this was a fittingly polite way of saying bollocks to 2020, really. And it's some lovely old wood type I have with an old Adana cherub block. So printed on my old 80-year-old Adana desktop HS1, which is very small. Another upside of COVID was that online shopping meant lots of free card to print on. So I basically collected everything that came in the door and used it to print on the back of. So, and also noticed, which got reported as well later over the last year, that the backs of Amazon packs look very much like Adolf Hitler or Charlie Chaplin. So this was, again, for the British Printing Society. I was struggling for an idea to send them. I didn't want to send something I'd already printed. And then that sort of became the idea in a way. So I couldn't think of anything. And I thought, how can I send them nothing? And I thought maybe I could send them a blank page, but how do you print a blank page? And anyway, thinking around that idea, I remember the idea that when you're online, when there's a missing page, you get this error, 404 page missing. So I thought I would send a missing page to the publishing group. So I made this missing page symbol from 12-point unit borders and printed 50 of them or 60 of them. But when I printed them all out, they all looked really sad. And I thought it just didn't feel right sending this really kind of sad thing out. Everyone was a bit depressed anyway. So I thought, what would this sad page look like if it was found? And so I came up with what it would look like if it was found, which is this one. So he's happy now, and the neat thing about this was that I only had to move a really small number of these 12-point borders to make both versions. So if I do that, you can kind of see them flipping. So it's quite simple to do both, and quite fun. And so alongside all of those, I was also developing this tangram idea, sort of chipping away at it. And eventually I managed to work out pretty much something that works in terms of the spacing, that the quads and things you need to go with it. And I created this set and then printed the packaging with the actual tangrams themselves, and handmade some boxes, and then just made up a few small packets of these tangrams, which is this. So you get in the packet, you get like one set of 7-piece tangrams, an extra piece for some of the patterns you need to make, which require a flipped parallelogram. And then these 2 sets of wooden spacing, which make it a lot easier to lock it up in a chase. And then I just made a little leaflet that has a few ideas in. So I used this to print the last project in this presentation, which was for yesterday's Waze Goose. So this is a combination of type and tangram, locked up in chases, and again, using the free Amazon packaging, or the back of it anyway. And this next slide will show you more about how it kind of goes together. So on the right is the type high tangram forming the goose, and in the other chase there is the spacing that takes up the same space, if you like, same shape, but it's obviously not type high. And then the type is type high. So you print it together, you get it to print together. So on the other page are some other colour combinations of the same design. And that is the end of my talk. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, Pete.